The hall was massive, cold, and silent. Blue lights floated in the air like stars trapped inside glass. This was the central science chamber of the Valorian Empire, one of the most advanced alien civilizations in the galaxy. Every wall was covered with glowing symbols, moving numbers, and complex equations that no human mind was supposed to understand. At the center of the room stood the greatest alien scientist alive, Professor Zelvar. He was tall, calm, and proud. For 300 years, his work had shaped alien technology, energy systems, and space travel. Among the aliens, his word was law. If Zelvar said an equation was perfect, no one dared question it. Today was a special day. Dozens of senior alien scientists stood in rows, watching as Zelvar explained a universal equation on a massive holographic screen. This equation controlled the balance of energy used by their starships and cities. It was known as the final constant. The aliens believed it was flawless. Near the back of the room stood someone who did not belong. A human teen. He was small compared to the aliens. He wore simple clothes and stood with his hands behind his back. His name was Eli. He was only 16 years old. He was not a soldier, not a leader, and not famous. He was invited only because humans were now part of the Galactic Alliance, and the aliens wanted to show their superior knowledge. Some aliens glanced at him and smiled. Others laughed quietly. "What is a child doing here?" one alien whispered. "Humans send their young to watch real intelligence," another replied with mockery. Eli heard them. He said nothing. He watched the equation. Zelvar's voice echoed across the chamber. "This equation has remained unchanged for 100 cycles," he said proudly. "It is perfect. It proves the limits of all known intelligence." The aliens nodded in agreement. Eli frowned. His eyes moved slowly across the symbols. He leaned his head slightly to the side. Something felt wrong. Very small. Almost invisible. But it was there. A mistake. His heart beat faster. He checked again in his mind. Simple steps. Simple logic. He did not need advanced tools. The problem was not complex. That was what scared him. The mistake was basic. Zelvar finished his explanation and turned to the audience. "As you can see, no species has ever found a flaw." Laughter echoed again. Eli raised his hand. The room froze. Every alien turned to look at the human teen. Silence fell like a heavy shadow. Zelvar blinked in surprise. "Yes?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp. Eli swallowed. He knew every eye was on him. I think there is a problem," he said softly. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the chamber exploded with laughter. Aliens laughed openly now. Some held their sides. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "A problem?" one alien said. "In that equation?" Zelvar smiled, amused. "Young human," he said, "this equation existed before your species learned fire." More laughter. Eli felt his face warm, but he did not step back. He looked at the equation again. The error was still there. Clear. Simple. Dangerous. "I'm not trying to insult anyone," Eli said. "I just think one value cancels another incorrectly." The laughter slowly faded. Zelvar's smile tightened. "Are you saying my work is wrong?" Eli nodded once. "Yes, sir." Gasps filled the chamber. This was no longer funny. The senior scientists whispered nervously. Guards shifted their positions. No one had ever spoken to Zelvar like this before, especially not a human child. Zelvar studied Eli carefully. "Explain," he said. "Entertain us." Eli stepped forward. The holographic screen shifted closer to him. Symbols floated around his head like stars. He pointed at one small section of the equation. "This part assumes perfect balance," Eli said, "but the variables don't match. It only works if energy loss is 0. That never happens." The room went quiet again. A junior alien scientist leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The equation flickered. Just once. No one laughed now. Eli looked up at the galaxy's greatest scientist. If I'm wrong, he said calmly, then nothing changes. But if I'm right, your systems are unstable. The chamber felt suddenly very cold. Zelvar's eyes widened, just a little. And for the first time in centuries, the greatest alien scientist The silence inside the chamber felt heavier than before. Professor Zelvar stood still, staring at the glowing equation. The symbols floated calmly, as if nothing had happened. Around him, the senior alien scientists waited, unsure whether to laugh again or remain silent. A human teen had just questioned the foundation of their greatest scientific achievement. Zelvar turned slowly toward Eli. Do you understand where you are? The professor asked. His voice was smooth, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. Eli nodded. Yes, sir. Do you understand who I am? Zelvar continued. Yes. And still, Zelvar said, you claim my equation is wrong. Eli did not raise his voice. Yes. A few aliens laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Zelvar lifted one long finger. The laughter stopped at once. Very well, he said. You may continue. Speak freely. We will observe how humans think. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. This was not respect. This was humiliation. Eli took a slow breath. He stepped closer to the holographic screen. His heart beat fast, but his hands were steady. He had solved harder problems alone in his room on Earth, with nothing but a notebook and a pencil. This was just another problem. Bigger audience. Bigger risk. The equation assumes closed energy flow, Eli said. But real systems are never closed. Zelvar tilted his head. That is a basic concept, he replied. We account for that. Eli nodded. You do. But only once. Some of the scientists frowned. Eli pointed again. You remove energy loss here, he said, but it appears again later. You count it twice. It looks correct, but it isn't. The aliens whispered to each other. Zelvar waved his hand. Enough, he said calmly. You are confusing theory with practice. Eli shook his head. No, sir. I'm simplifying it. That word, simplifying, hit the room like an insult. A tall alien scientist stepped forward. You think our work is too complex for itself? He asked. I think complexity hides mistakes, Eli replied. Gasps echoed. Zelvar's eyes narrowed. Humans are known for emotion, he said. Science requires discipline. Eli looked up. Humans fail a lot, he said. That's why we double-check. The chamber grew tense. Zelvar turned to the other scientists. Observe, he said. This is why humans rely on instinct, not mastery. Eli felt the weight of the words. He was alone here. One human against an empire of minds. But the numbers did not lie. They never did. May I run a small test? Eli asked. Zelvar smiled again. By all means. We will enjoy this. The holographic system responded to Eli's touch. He changed only one value. One small number. Nothing dramatic. At first, nothing happened. Some aliens smirked. Then the energy graph shifted. Just slightly. A junior scientist leaned forward. That shouldn't move. Another value adjusted itself automatically. The room went quiet again. Zelvar stepped closer to the screen. Reset the system, he ordered. The equation returned to normal. Eli repeated the test. The same shift appeared. The whispers returned, louder now. Zelvar's voice hardened. Coincidence, he said. Eli nodded. Then let me show you the result. He ran the equation forward. Simulated power grids began to flicker. Starship routes changed by small degrees. Not enough to cause panic, but enough to cause failure over time. One alien scientist whispered, "That would overload the core." Another replied, "In 50 cycles." Zelvar raised his hand sharply. "Silence!" The room obeyed. Zelvar looked at Eli, not with laughter now, but with something colder. "How long have humans known this?" he asked. Eli hesitated. "We don't," he said. "We would never assume it's perfect." That answer struck deeper than any insult. The professor turned back to the equation. His breathing slowed. His confidence began to crack. "If this error exists," he said quietly, "it would affect everything." Eli nodded. "Yes." The guards moved closer again, not toward Eli, but toward the exits. For the first time, the aliens were not afraid of the human teen. They were afraid of being wrong. And Eli could feel it. The chamber no longer felt like a place of knowledge. It felt like a place of fear. The glowing equation floated silently in the air, but now it looked different. Not because the symbols had changed, but because the aliens were seeing it with new eyes. What once felt perfect now felt fragile. Professor Zelvar stood very still. Around him, the senior scientists whispered in low voices. Their confidence was gone. Every whisper carried the same thought: what if the human is right? Eli stood quietly near the screen. He did not smile. He did not look proud. He only watched the data. To him, the problem was still just numbers. But to the aliens, those numbers were their entire civilization. Zelvar broke the silence. "Increase the simulation range," he ordered. A scientist obeyed. The hologram expanded. Star systems appeared. Energy lines connected cities, fleets, and massive orbital stations. Everything the Valorian Empire depended on was now part of the equation. Eli swallowed. The calculation began to run. At first, everything looked stable. A few aliens relaxed. Then a warning symbol flashed, small, yellow, easy to miss. Eli pointed at it. "That's the drift," he said. Zelvar ignored him. "Continue." Minutes passed. The warning symbol turned orange. Power output numbers began to fall. Only slightly. But steadily. One scientist spoke nervously. "Energy loss is increasing." "That's impossible," another replied. "The system self-corrects." Eli shook his head. "Not anymore." Zelvar snapped his head toward him. "Explain." "The correction relies on the same false balance," Eli said. "It feeds the error back into itself." The room went silent again. The warning symbol turned red. A simulated city flickered, then went dark. Gasps echoed through the chamber. That city represents 12 billion lives, a scientist whispered. Zelvar's face hardened. Pause the simulation. The system froze. No one moved. For the first time in his long life, Zelvar felt the ground shift beneath his certainty. This was no longer about pride. This was about survival. He turned slowly to Eli. How long, he asked, before this becomes real? Eli thought carefully. Based on your expansion rate, 40 to 50 cycles. Shock spread through the room. That's soon, someone said. That's nothing, another replied. Zelvar closed his eyes briefly. His entire career had been built on this equation. His name was written into every system, every ship, every city. If it was wrong, then he was wrong. And the Empire would pay the price. Run a second simulation, Zelvar said. Human variables only. The scientists hesitated. That is not standard, one began. Do it, Zelvar commanded. The system changed. Eli's corrections were applied fully this time. The math simplified. The equation looked almost smaller. Cleaner. The simulation ran again. This time, the system stabilized. Energy loss leveled out. Cities stayed bright. Ships followed clean paths. No warnings appeared. The chamber was completely silent. A junior scientist spoke in a trembling voice. It works. Another whispered. It shouldn't, but it does. Zelvar stared at the screen. His reflection flickered in the hologram, distorted by the numbers he once trusted without question. How? He asked quietly. Did you see this? Eli hesitated. Because humans expect mistakes, he said. We don't trust perfection. The words hit harder than any accusation. Zelvar slowly turned to face the gathered scientists. He saw fear in their eyes, not fear of Eli, but fear of the truth. Seal this chamber, he ordered. The doors closed with a deep, final sound. No information leaves this room, Zelvar continued. Not yet. The scientists nodded. Eli felt a chill. Why? Because, Zelvar said, if the galaxy learns that our foundation is broken, chaos will follow. He looked at Eli again. Not as a child. Not as a joke. But as a threat. Or a solution. You will stay, Zelvar said. You will explain everything. Eli nodded slowly. Outside the chamber, the Valorian Empire continued its perfect routine. Inside, its greatest truth had just cracked. And it was only getting worse. The sealed chamber felt smaller now. Not because the walls had moved, but because fear had filled the space between them. The glowing symbols in the air no longer looked beautiful. They looked dangerous. Every number felt like a ticking clock. Professor Zelvar stood at the center of the room, his long fingers clasped behind his back. He had faced war, rebellion, and cosmic disasters, but never this. Never a truth that came from a human child. Eli sat quietly at the side console. He was tired but alert. He knew what this moment meant. Not just for him, but for his entire species. The senior scientists argued in low voices. If this spreads, the Alliance will panic. We cannot admit failure. Our enemies will exploit this. Zelvar raised his hand. Silence followed instantly. "This is not a debate," he said. "This is reality." He turned toward Eli. "Explain the correction again." Slowly. Eli stood. His legs felt heavy, but his voice was steady. "Your equation tries to force balance," he said. "But balance is not natural. Systems survive through adjustment, not control." Some scientists frowned. "You design perfection," Eli continued. "But perfection doesn't bend. When conditions change, it breaks." Zelvar felt a sharp pain behind his eyes. Every word struck something deep inside him. His life's work had been about control, order, certainty. "Humans accept chaos," Eli said. "We plan for failure." That sentence echoed. A senior scientist snapped. "Chaos is weakness." Eli looked at him calmly. "No. Chaos is information." The chamber went silent again. Zelvar moved closer to the screen. He saw the truth now. The error was obvious once you stopped believing the system was perfect. He had ignored it for centuries because he trusted his own brilliance too much. He lowered his head. The greatest alien scientist in the galaxy bowed, just slightly. The room froze. "I was wrong," Zelvar said. The words felt unreal. The scientists stared at him in shock. Some looked afraid. Others looked relieved. Zelvar straightened. "And because I was wrong," he continued, "our empire is vulnerable." A guard stepped forward. "Sir," he said carefully, "what about the human?" Zelvar turned to Eli. "What about him?" "He knows our weakness." Eli's stomach tightened. Zelvar studied him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "He did not create the weakness," he said. "He revealed it." The guard hesitated. "Orders?" Zelvar spoke firmly. "The human is under my protection." The tension eased slightly. Zelvar faced Eli again. "If we apply your correction," he asked, "can we rebuild safely?" "Yes," Eli replied. "But it will take time. And you must accept changes you won't like." Zelvar gave a slow nod. "Begin limited integration," he ordered. "Only core systems. No public announcement." The scientists rushed to obey. As systems adjusted, Zelvar felt something new rise within him. Not anger. Not fear. Respect. "You did not raise your voice," Zelvar said quietly to Eli. "You did not insult us." "Why?" Eli thought. "Because I wanted you to listen." Zelvar allowed himself a small smile. "You understand power better than many rulers." A scientist interrupted. "Professor, the correction is spreading faster than expected." Zelvar turned sharply. "Define faster." "The system is adapting," the scientist said. "It's rewriting subequations automatically." Eli's eyes widened. "That's not good." "Why?" Zelvar asked. "Because now," Eli said, "your empire is changing on its own." The chamber fell silent again. Zelvar looked at the screens, watching centuries of rigid designs slowly shift into something flexible. Something human. "This cannot be stopped," a scientist whispered. Zelvar closed his eyes. He had tried to control the universe. Now the universe was correcting him. He opened his eyes and made his choice. "Let it change," he said. The words echoed through the chamber. Outside, unseen by any of them, the Valorian Empire had begun its transformation. And at the center of it stood a human teen, quiet, calm, and impossible to ignore. The changes spread quietly at first. Across the Valorian Empire, systems adjusted themselves. Energy grids became flexible. Starship engines corrected small losses instead of fighting them. Nothing collapsed. Nothing exploded. In fact, everything worked better. That frightened the aliens more than failure ever could. Inside the central science chamber, Professor Zelvar watched the data streams flow smoothly. For the first time in centuries, there were no warning signals. No hidden stress points. The system was alive now, not frozen in forced perfection. And it followed human logic. Eli stood beside him, arms folded, eyes tired. He had not slept. His mind had been running numbers all night. To him, this still felt unreal. He was just a human teen who liked solving problems. He never planned to change an empire. Zelvar broke the silence. "Your species does not fear instability," he said. Eli shook his head. "We fear pretending it isn't there." That answer stayed with Zelvar. The senior scientists entered the chamber one by one. Their expressions were tense. Some looked confused. Others looked deeply uncomfortable. "Our cities report increased efficiency," one scientist said. "No failures. Our fleets show reduced energy loss," another added. "We don't understand why." Zelvar turned to them. "Because humans designed for failure," he said. "Not for pride." That word, pride, hung in the air. One scientist stepped forward. "Are you saying our way is wrong?" Zelvar answered honestly. "I am saying our way was fragile." The room reacted sharply. Whispers rose. Some scientists looked offended. Others looked thoughtful. Eli spoke quietly. "Humans break things on purpose," he said. "That's how we learn where they fail." The aliens stared at him. "You destroy your own systems?" one asked in disbelief. "Yes," Eli replied. "All the time." The idea shocked them. Zelvar finally understood. The Valorians built monuments to intelligence. Humans built tools, and expected them to fail. Humans did not worship their ideas. They tested them. That made humans dangerous. A transmission alert flashed. "Professor," a scientist said nervously, "the Alliance Council requests an explanation. They've detected the system changes." Zelvar felt the weight of the moment. The truth could no longer be hidden. He looked at Eli. "If I speak," he said, "our empire will lose status." Eli nodded. "But you'll survive." That answer decided everything. Zelvar straightened his posture. "Open the channel." The hologram shifted. Alien leaders appeared from across the galaxy. Confusion filled their faces. "What is happening to your systems?" one demanded. Zelvar spoke calmly. "We were wrong." Gasps followed. "Our core equation contained a flaw," he continued. "A human identified it." The council erupted. "A human? A child? This is impossible." Zelvar raised his hand. "It is inevitable." He gestured toward Eli. "This is not human superiority," he said. "This is human method." The council fell silent. "Humans survive," Zelvar said, "because they never assume they are right." Eli felt his chest tighten. He had never heard a non-human speak like this. One council member asked slowly, "What does this mean for the rest of us?" Zelvar answered truthfully, "It means humanity is no longer harmless." The words sent shockwaves through the channel. Eli stepped forward. "We don't want control," he said. "We want understanding." The council stared at him. Zelvar watched the reactions carefully. Fear, respect, curiosity, and something new. Caution. After the channel closed, the chamber felt quiet again. Zelvar turned to Eli. "You have changed how the galaxy sees your species." Eli shook his head. "No," he said. "I just showed them how we think." Zelvar nodded slowly. "That may be more dangerous." Outside the chamber, across distant stars, alien civilizations began rewriting their textbooks. One lesson was added everywhere. Never underestimate humans. Because they do not seek perfection. They seek truth. And truth adapts. The reaction did not come all at once. At first, the galaxy was quiet. Alien governments studied the data again and again. They replayed the recordings from the Valorian science chamber. A human teen. A calm voice. A simple correction. And an empire forced to admit it was wrong. No weapons were used. No threats were made. That was what frightened them most. Across distant star systems, councils met behind sealed doors. Leaders spoke in low tones. Military commanders listened instead of giving orders. If the Valorians were wrong, one leader said, then any of us could be. Another replied. And a human found it. Humanity had not conquered anything. Yet space felt smaller. On Earth, Eli returned home quietly. There were no crowds. No medals. Only a sealed report and a warning to stay silent. His room looked the same as before. Simple desk. Old books. A cracked chair. But Eli was no longer the same. At night, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about the galaxy, watching humanity with new eyes. On Valoria, Professor Zelvar stood before the High Assembly. His posture was calm, but his voice carried weight it never had before. We believed intelligence meant control, he said. Humans believe intelligence means survival. The assembly listened. They assume systems will fail. Zelvar continued. So they design them to bend, not break. A senior official asked. Is that why they advance so quickly? Yes, Zelvar replied. They learn faster because they expect to be wrong. That truth spread like fire. Alien schools changed their lessons. Where once perfection was praised, now flexibility was discussed. Where certainty ruled, doubt was introduced. And always, one example was mentioned. The human teen. Military analysts grew uneasy. If humans apply this thinking to weapons, they already have. Another interrupted. The difference was not power. It was mindset. Human ships were not the strongest. Human weapons were not the largest. But human designs adapted in battle. They learned from failure in real time. Alien simulations began to fail when humans were added. Human unpredictability cannot be modeled, one report stated. That line was shared across the galaxy. On Valoria, Zelvar watched the stars from his chamber. He had lost prestige, but gained clarity. For the first time, he questioned everything he believed was permanent. A junior scientist approached him. Sir, the Alliance requests a human advisor. Permanently. Zelvar smiled faintly. They are afraid. Yes, the scientist admitted. But also curious. Zelvar looked toward the distant blue star that marked Earth's location. Humans are not dangerous because they are smarter, he said. They are dangerous because they refuse to stop learning. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity noticed the change. Alien diplomats spoke more carefully. Trade deals shifted in Earth's favor. Requests replaced demands. Even the tone of communication softened. Humans did not celebrate. They noticed. That was enough. Eli received one final message from Zelvar. The galaxy has adjusted its distance from your species. Not because of fear, but because of respect. Eli read it twice. He did not smile. He knew respect could turn into fear very quickly. Across the stars, a quiet rule formed. When humans speak, listen. When humans calculate, check again. When humans say something is wrong, do not laugh. Because the galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humanity does not need to prove superiority. Time does it for them. And now, the galaxy was watching humanity carefully. Waiting. Learning. And wondering what humans would question next. The galaxy changed slowly, but the change never stopped. Across star systems, new rules appeared, not written in law, but followed in silence. Before any great project, alien scientists asked a simple question. Has a human checked this? It was not mockery. It was caution. On Valoria, the central science chamber looked different now. The glowing symbols still floated in the air, but the equations were simpler. Flexible. Designed to change when the universe changed. Professor Zelvar stood alone in the chamber, older now. His title no longer carried absolute authority, but something more valuable had replaced it. Trust. He looked at the equation once called the final constant. It had a new name now. The human correction. Not because humans owned it, but because humans had saved it. Far away, on Earth, Eli lived a quiet life. He never became famous. He refused interviews. He turned down offers of power. He studied, taught, and asked questions. That was enough. Sometimes he received messages from alien students. They asked about human methods, about failure, about doubt. Eli always replied the same way. Being wrong is how you move forward. In alien schools, children learned a new story. Not about a war. Not about conquest. But about a human teen who stood in a room full of giants and calmly said, "This doesn't work." The story was taught carefully. It always ended with the same lesson. Never laugh at humans when they ask questions. Because questions were how humans survived on a dangerous world. A world with storms, predators, disasters, and constant change. Humans learned early that nature did not care about perfection. Only adaptation. Military academies studied human behavior closely. They found something strange. Humans did not fear being wrong. They feared refusing to learn. That made them unpredictable. That made them powerful. One day, a young alien asked Zelvar, "Do you regret listening to the human?" Zelvar thought for a long moment. "No," he said. "I regret not listening sooner." The galaxy expanded. New species joined the alliance. New technologies emerged. And in every major breakthrough, there was one common influence. Human logic. Not dominating. Not controlling. Adapting. And so the legend grew. Not of Eli alone, but of humanity. A species that did not chase perfection, yet kept surpassing it. A species that questioned gods, laws, and even itself. A species that survived not because it was the strongest, but because it was honest. Honest about failure. Honest about limits. Honest enough to change. In time, the galaxy accepted a final truth. Humans were not superior because they were smarter. They were superior because they never stopped learning. And the universe, vast and unforgiving, respected that more than anything else. In the end, the alien scientist who once laughed became the one who taught the warning. When a human speaks calmly, Zelvar told his students, do not mistake it for weakness. Because somewhere behind that calm voice is a mind already preparing for what comes next. And the galaxy would never forget the day it learned that lesson. Not from a fleet. Not from a weapon. But from a quiet human teen. And a simple equation. That proved humanity was never inferior. Only underestimated.